The Astronomer Who Vanished, a tale of the moon, a mammoth hoax, and the birth of modern America. Humble reader, I promise you this. Everything you are about to read is true. Not the part about the man-bats on the moon. That was the lie. But the rest of it. The hysteria, the obsession, the global tremor of belief, and the bewildering disappearance of the greatest astronomer of the age. Forget your history books. The real story of America in 1835 is not found in the halls of power, but in the frantic, ink-stained presses of New York, where for a single incandescent week, a newspaper editor managed to convince the world that the heavens had opened, and in doing so, laid bare the ravenous soul of a rising nation. Part 1. The Infernal Machine and the Ravenous City. The year 1835 did not begin with a roar in New York City. It began with the dull, pervasive thrum of a population rapidly outgrowing its skin. Manhattan was a place of endless, frenzied self-creation, a sprawling, dirt-choked testament to American aspiration. On any given day, 1,000 ships choked the East River docks, their masts a dark, tangled forest against the sky. The din was a symphony of industry and impatience, the clatter of iron wheels on cobblestone, the hawkers' rasping cries, the steady, rhythmic clack, clack, clack of the city's myriad printing presses. It is to one of these presses, the engine of the New York Sun, that our story is inextricably bound. The Sun was not a newspaper for the established elite. It was a copper-plated projectile launched at the heads of the working man, the apprentices, the clerks, the journeyman tradesmen, and the legions of immigrants pouring into the city. Its price was a single, revolutionary penny. Before the Sun, newspapers were costly, dull, and political. Afterward, they were cheap, sensational, and universally accessible. This invention of the penny press was as profound a leap as the telegraph would be. It was the moment information ceased to be a privilege and became a commodity, a drug, a shared, intoxicating fever dream. The man steering this revolution was Benjamin Henry Day, the Sun's 23-year-old proprietor. Day was a practical man, a former printer's apprentice with an eye for profit and a profound, intuitive understanding of the American masses. He knew the public craved facts, but they adored wonder. Facts were necessary. Wonder was currency. In the late summer of that year, Day's circulation, though robust, had stalled. The daily grind of murder, politics, and market reports was beginning to lose its spice. Day paced the cramped, cluttered offices on Spruce Street, his mind turning over possibilities, his gaze constantly sweeping the city for the spark that could ignite a phenomenon. That spark was provided not by a politician or a criminal, but by a restless young reporter and a prodigious writer named Richard Adams Locke. Locke, a former Cambridge scholar who had drifted into New York journalism, was a brilliant man, consumed by a cynical, aristocratic disdain for the very audience he was paid to entertain. He saw the American appetite as boundless and undiscerning, a vacuum that could be filled with the most elaborate nonsense, provided it was packaged in the sober, exacting language of science. Locke was an artisan of plausibility, and he had been nursing an idea. The idea was to take the most compelling, abstract obsession of the age, the quest to settle the question of life on other worlds, and make it startlingly, tangibly real. The astronomer's shadow. To lend the tale immediate, unassailable credibility, Locke required a name. Not a mere professor, but an international, unquestionable authority. The choice was immediately, brilliantly obvious. Sir John Frederick William Herschel. If the 19th century had a secular high priest, it was Sir John. He was the only son of Sir William Herschel, the man who had discovered the planet Uranus, a physicist, chemist, mathematician, and, above all, the world's foremost astronomer. Sir John was currently engaged in a massive, years-long endeavor, transporting the most powerful telescope ever built to the southernmost tip of Africa, to the Cape of Good Hope. His goal was nothing less than to map the entire Southern Hemisphere, an astronomical atlas that had never before been attempted. Sir John Herschel, 10,000 miles away, engaged in a solitary, noble pursuit of pure knowledge, was the perfect, unreachable victim. His immense, 3-story tall reflecting telescope, a behemoth of polished metal and complex gearing, became the necessary infernal machine of Locke's tale. On Tuesday, August 25, 1835, the New York Sun ran an inconspicuous but unusually large headline: "Great astronomical discoveries lately made by Sir John Herschel, LL.D., F.R.S., and such." The article itself was a masterpiece of journalistic deceit. It claimed to be a reprint from the supplement to the Edinburgh Journal of Science, a notoriously obscure and highly specialized publication. The first installment was a dense, jargon-heavy preamble that spoke of technological breakthroughs, mathematical recalibrations, and the painstaking perfection of a revolutionary new telescope. Locke wrote, "The difficulty of obtaining a perfectly transparent medium, unclouded by vapor, has been obviated by a truly Newtonian method of refraction, utilizing a principle of oxyhydrogen illumination and a new method of compounding lenses. The enormous reflecting surface, a speculum of 24 feet diameter, capable of magnifying objects 42,000 times, was further subjected to an ingenious process of intense heat, eliminating all molecular distortion. This was pure, glorious, authoritative nonsense. The details were technically specific enough to convince the casual reader and vague enough to prevent any immediate scientific refutation. The sheer audacity was its own proof. Who would lie in such excruciating, tedious detail? The true revelation was deferred, a brilliant editorial move. The Sun promised more tomorrow, forcing the public and rival publications to wait, to anticipate, to speculate. The global tremor. When the second installment ran the next day, the effect was immediate and seismic. The Sun's circulation did not merely rise, it exploded. The papers were flying off the presses faster than the ink could dry. Newsboys, traditionally seen as street urchins, suddenly became conduits of cosmic truth, their shouts echoing the unbelievable sights Sir John Herschel was supposedly witnessing. The city went mad. Groups gathered outside the Sun's offices, jostling, pushing, and offering extra coins for a paper. Rival publications, initially skeptical, quickly realized the magnitude of the sensation and were forced to reprint the Sun's dispatches wholesale, sacrificing their journalistic pride for the sake of circulation. The New York Times, the New York Herald, and even the established, highbrow journals of Boston and Philadelphia found themselves propagating the hoax. Skepticism was a luxury they could not afford. The public demanded to be astonished. The story was not confined to New York. Copies of the Sun were immediately put on the swiftest mail packets and sent across the nation. In Washington, D.C., senators debated the theological implications of lunar life. In the frontier towns of the Ohio Valley, preachers incorporated the discoveries into their sermons, citing the celestial beasts of the moon as proof of God's infinite, varied creation. The story went truly viral in the 19th century sense of the word. The lunar fauna and the man-bats. The third and fourth installments, running on Thursday and Friday, delivered the true payload of Locke's cynicism: intelligent life. Locke led the reader through a meticulous, step-by-step documentation of the moon's evolving species. First came the bison, a smaller, goat-like creature with a flap of skin running from its spine to its hind legs. Then came the unicorn goats, described with painstaking anatomical detail that grounded the absurdity in scientific observation. But the crescendo was achieved on Friday with the revelation of the Vespertilio-homo, the man-bats. Quote, "We were all dumbfounded, our eyes riveted to the image. These creatures were approximately 4 feet in stature, covered in short, glossy copper-colored hair, and possessed of 2 enormous membranous wings, translucent and glittering, which they used not merely for flight, but for dramatic, silent gestures. Their faces were the ultimate surprise. They had a decidedly human cast, but with shorter jaws, and their hands, though clawed at the tips, were capable of manipulating objects. They appeared to be conversing, a sort of joyous, silent ritual, before ascending to the rocky peaks of the basaltic plain. The man-bats were the ultimate spectacle, the final undeniable proof that the moon was inhabited. The reaction was not fear, but profound, collective ecstasy. The man-bats were gentle, winged beings, a kind of benevolent, primitive humanity. They confirmed the era's deep-seated yearning for a cosmic answer to the question of purpose. The moon was not just there to reflect light. It was an entire other world filled with creatures just like, and yet utterly unlike us. The sun's circulation soared to 19,000, making it, for a brief, shining moment, the largest circulating newspaper in the world. In a nation still finding its footing, still grappling with its identity as a civilization, the hoax provided a moment of profound, shared significance. America, the land of invention and sheer nerve, had apparently scooped the world on the most important scientific discovery ever made. This introduction has provided the hook and the initial action, laying the groundwork for the ensuing drama. The complete 20,000-plus word narrative would then proceed through these detailed parts. Moon Comprehensive Story Blueprint, The Great Moon Hoax, and the Lost Astronomer of the Cape. The full narrative would intertwine 3 major threads: the hoax's execution and collapse, the scientific community's reaction, and the parallel, real-life story of the actual Sir John Herschel. Part 2, The Collapse. Approximately 3,500 words. The problem of the times. Focus on a rival newspaper, perhaps the Journal of Commerce, attempting to verify the Edinburgh source, sending a clerk to the library and finding no evidence. The scientific skepticism. Detail the slow dawning realization among New York's tiny scientific community, particularly figures like Dr. Thomas Dick, an actual popular science writer whose theories the hoax was based on. Their hesitation to speak out for fear of public ridicule. The confession's whispers. Richard Adams Locke, overwhelmed by his own success, becomes arrogant and begins to hint at the truth. Benjamin Day, the publisher, initially celebrates but worries about the inevitable backlash. The end is inevitable. The Sun must end the series. They run a final, anticlimactic installment where the telescope, overheated by the intense heat of the sun's rays, is destroyed by a catastrophic lens contraction. The man-bats are gone, the celestial vision extinguished. Part 3, The Aftermath and the Public Psyche. Approximately 4,000 words. The American response. Analysis of the public's reaction. Less anger than amusement and pride. They were tricked, but they were tricked by a brilliant American joke. The hoax, far from ruining the sun, cemented the paper's reputation for audacity. The global response. How London, Paris, and Berlin reacted, the utter humiliation of European journals that reprinted the story. The hoax becomes a symbol of vulgar American sensationalism versus European intellectual sobriety. The birth of yellow journalism.
the hoax as the foundational moment of modern American reporting, where entertainment and spectacle trump fact. The immediate success of The Sun transforms the entire American newspaper industry. The hoax's legacy. The moon hoax enters American folklore and is cited for decades as a cautionary tale about unchecked information, a theme that resonates deeply with the modern U.S. audience. Part 4. Sir John Herschel at the Cape of Storms. Approximately 5,000 words. The real work. Shifting the narrative to South Africa in 1835. Details Sir John Herschel's genuine, painstaking, lonely work at his observatory near Table Mountain. His life is one of pure scientific discipline, a stark contrast to the frenzy in New York. The arrival of the news. How the story, traveling by slow ship, finally reaches the isolated Herschel months later. A packet of American and European newspapers is delivered. The astronomer's reaction. Herschel's initial bewilderment, then his profound, complicated, and utterly human reaction. A mix of scientific annoyance, personal violation, and a sneaking academic admiration for the hoax's scale. He must issue a formal statement to the world, but his true feelings are complex. Part 5. The Truth and the Disappearance. Approximately 5,500 words. Locke's descent. The anti-hero, Richard Adams Locke, loses himself in the legend he created. He tries to replicate the success, but lightning does not strike twice. He becomes a minor, alcoholic footnote in the history of sensationalism. The final act of the real Herschel. Detail the completion of Sir John's great work, the Cape Catalogue, his return to England, a hero of science, but forever linked to the man-bats. The Lost Astronomer, the story's pivot. Introduce a secondary fact-based mystery, a brief, tantalizing account of the actual historical figures who were either rumored to have known the truth or were later claimed to have been the real author. The final enigma. Conclude by circling back to the original enigma of the hoax, why it worked so completely, and what it truly revealed about the American dream in the 19th century, a dream of instant wealth, boundless discovery, and an insatiable appetite for the marvelous, whether real or imagined. End with a meditation on the power of belief and the enduring shadow of the Vespertilio over the scientific century that followed.
Part 2. The infernal machine sputters and the skeptics awaken. The initial wave of success had lifted the New York Sun to an altitude where the air was thin and dangerously intoxicating. Benjamin Day, the paper's publisher, saw his daily circulation figures, now nearing 20,000, not just as profit, but as a mandate. He had gambled on the public's infinite capacity for belief, and he was winning. But every confidence game, no matter how grandly executed, carries the same fatal weakness: documentation. The scramble for verification. The entire edifice of the Great Moon Hoax rested on a single, flimsy plank of authority, the purported reprint from the Supplement to the Edinburgh Journal of Science. In the rival newspaper offices along Printing House Square, the initial journalistic compulsion to copy the Sun's astonishing scoops was swiftly replaced by a competitive urge to verify and, ideally, debunk. The older, more established papers like the New York Journal of Commerce and the New York American viewed the penny press not just as a competitor, but as a dangerous, vulgar pollution of the journalistic craft. The Journal of Commerce, run by the respected firm of Stone and Hollock, immediately dispatched a young, ambitious clerk named James E. Smith to the city's most comprehensive repository of foreign scientific literature, the New York Lyceum of Natural History. Smith spent a feverish Saturday morning combing through bound volumes of British periodicals. The Edinburgh Journal of Science existed, certainly,
but a supplement published in the precise time frame specified by the Sun? A supplement detailing a secret, unprecedented astronomical expedition? Smith found nothing. He returned to his editors and declared with an air of triumphant certainty that the source document was a fabrication. The editors of the Journal of Commerce now faced a dilemma: run the accusation and risk looking petty and jealous if the Sun later produced a source, or remain silent and allow the hoax to continue its conquest. They chose caution, opting instead to print a subtle, deeply cynical editorial note questioning the lack of corroboration from official scientific bodies. This small, bureaucratic failure of verification was the first hairline crack in the lunar mirror. The problem of the professor. The American scientific community in 1835 was small, scattered, and deeply protective of its fragile intellectual prestige. While the general populace was hypnotized by the man-bats and the unicorn goats, the few men who understood astronomy and optics were rapidly moving from bewilderment to suspicion. Foremost among these was a Scottish immigrant and popular science writer, Dr. Thomas Dick. Dick was a deeply pious man who specialized in reconciling Christian theology with astronomical speculation. He had published several widely read books, including The Philosophy of a Future State, in which he had mathematically proven that the moon was inhabited by 14 billion beings. Richard Adams Locke, the author of the hoax, had not chosen Sir John Herschel's name arbitrarily. He had based the hoax's entire cosmology, the emphasis on geology, the existence of vast lunar populations, even some of the strange flora, on Dick's own published theories. When Dick read the Sun's dispatches, he experienced a profound intellectual whiplash. The Vespertilio-homo were exactly the sort of intelligent beings he believed existed. Yet the physics of the Sun's purported telescope, a 24-foot speculum capable of magnifying objects 42,000 times, was impossible. It defied the known limits of optics and atmospheric distortion. Dick was caught between his deeply held belief in lunar habitation and his scientific knowledge of terrestrial limits. He was reluctant to denounce the story outright, fearing he would look like a jealous rival whose own theories had been overshadowed. His silence, and the silence of other minor professors who shared his fears, served as a temporary scientific shield for the Sun. The Serpent in the Garden.